Welcome to Therapist Spotlight.
Hello everybody and welcome to Anta's Therapist Spotlight, the podcast where we aim to showcase our wonderful members to the wider community. I'm your host Joshua Brooks, and with us today is Leone Wilson. Leone is a naturopath with a postgraduate in nutrition, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Leone, how are you today?
Good, thanks Joshua. How are you?
I'm great. So, first question, what got you into natural medicine and natural health?
Look, I'm actually not so sure. When I was younger, I had anorexia, and I probably had a little bit of a interest in health then, but it was probably a bit obscure. And as life went on, as a single parent, I wanted to do naturopathy back in the day when I was about 32, but I had to raise my children. So I think it was because my family weren't a well family, and I thought there had to be something better. So it sort of sparked my interest into food initially around that whole anorexic time. But then clearly when you go to uni, you get a better perspective of health.
For sure. And so I'm guessing, like, when you were having your children, even though you weren't trained as a naturopath or anything back then, were you much more on the natural side of childcare and trying to raise your children in a much more like natural environment?
Oh, absolutely. And like everybody I see today, I used to Google or read certain things, and they're sometimes a little obscure. As I said, you know, they're not always 100% on, but we do our best, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. And so therefore, has that sparked an interest in you into doing like sort of pediatric naturopathy or anything like that? Or is that one of your specialties? Yeah. How's that integrated into your practice?
Well, to be honest, I'm more concerned with autoimmune.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
Because myself, I have Hashimoto's, but it's quite well regulated.
Yeah.
And I'm finding a lot of people are coming to clinic with autoimmune diseases. And I like to work on not only the autoimmune component with the herbs and the nutraceuticals, but the component of trauma that's probably led them to that place.
Yeah, wow, wonderful. And so then again, with your background in anorexia and going through that yourself, I'm assuming that would be such an empathetic thing for you to resonate with your clients, so you can actually tell them that you've been through these traumatic experiences yourself, and you can give them some advice and sort of be much more on the same level with them. Do you find that?
Yeah, actually, so that's probably where my practice has gone towards the trauma, past trauma, and how it manifests in the body.
Yeah.
So I went on to do EFT tapping and NLP for that reason.
Yeah, excellent. And so then, brass tacks, if I'm a new client and I want to come to you then with this, what's a consultation look like? What sort of questions are you asking, and what would you like me to bring to you for like that initial consultation?
To be honest, you could just bring yourself. Blood tests are handy, but if we take a full comprehensive case taking, I shouldn't need the blood test.
Yep.
And usually speaking, we would commence treatment, and it would be only if there was some point where you didn't progress that I would ask for blood tests. So I'm listening to you, and I'm listening to you for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I ask everything about your past health history, your genetics, your current complaints, I talk about every system. So even though it may not relate to the client as to what I'm asking, it all builds that picture, and it's a complex biochemical picture where I can see what chemical processes are being delayed or withheld, so I can support those systems. So I'm going to ask everything: poo, pus, blood, and mucus, all the nasty bits, to just find out exactly what's going on. And clearly I'm going to look at diet, but it's not going to be my first point of call.
Interesting. Okay. And why is that then? Because I talk to a lot of naturopaths and they all sort of diet is their first point of call. So why have you found that a little bit different?
I find most of my clients have high stress levels and chronic fatigue situations. If I was asked them to change their diet too significantly, it would be overwhelming.
Yeah. Cool.
So I tend to do some swaps, but it's in that first consult, I'm probably going to only ask you to do 3 things that are manageable. A lot of my clients just find it hard to sit in the chair and talk to me. They're that weak.
Wow. So that's great. Yeah. And it's an important thing, isn't it? Not overloading your client, because it just doesn't lead to a sustainable outcome. So you give them too much information and they can burn out.
It's overwhelming, yeah. So I like to say that I meet them where they're at. And then together we'll make those changes. But Rome wasn't conquered in a day, and it's only about progress rather than perfection.
And I think that's so important to teach people about natural medicine, is we're not necessarily in for the quick fix. It is much more of that lifestyle change and getting you back to living a more healthy, resilient life. And like you said, that doesn't happen overnight.
No, and often the biggest prescription is rest. Because we do all glorify being busy, and I'm no exception. And we're always trying to achieve. And to my way of thinking, I wonder whether that's something that we felt we had to. So there's a whole Pandora's box behind that, isn't there? You know, do we feel we have to? What's going on there? Did that result in our illness? Yeah.
And so then in your initial consultation, are you much more on the traditional naturopathic diagnostics? So like, do you do iridology? Do you do fingernail analysis? Do you do hair analysis? Do you do tongue analysis? Do you do sort of like the Katie Barron palpation analysis? How does that work within your practice?
It's more likely the grassroots. As I say, some of these clients are highly stressed and very fatigued. So I may not make a thing of it, but I'll be observing those things.
Yeah. Cool.
And so while we're talking, I'll be looking at the skin and just the eyes in general. If I see something, I'll then get my torch out and have a look. We offer iridology photos, but, you know, like that's not necessary on that first consult. And I'll be looking at their nails and just their whole demeanour, the gait when they walk in. But some ladies, mainly my demographic is mainly women, they just don't want to be too scrutinised. So I try to be a little bit subtle about it.
For sure, yeah.
Once I've built rapport, then yes, I'll definitely have a look.
Then the hammer can come out. But when you're doing the trauma stuff, then how does that figure in, and how do you approach that with your clients to maybe talk to them about that a little bit deeper? Is that, like you said, when you've built that rapport in the next couple of sessions, or do you try and get at it the first one? How does that kind of work with you, and how do you bring that through to your practice?
Quite often they'll be talking about their timeline of their history of health.
Yeah.
And I'll say to them, how was your childhood? And there will be those who go, it was absolutely dreadful, and elaborate. And then there'll be those who go, it was perfect. And you think, oh, that'll be next time. So it's about meeting them where they're at. You know, some people are at that place where they've realized it and they don't know what to do with it. And others just don't see it. And that's fine, because the body will let you know when it's ready.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's too much for people to handle, to remember something.
And so then when you've done your initial consultation and you've gone through that, how does a treatment process work with you? Are you a massive herb naturopath? Do you like nutraceuticals? You know, do you offer massage? How does that work? And I guess treatment plan wise, are you looking at maybe, hey, this is going to take time, I'd like you to book in for 5 sessions? How does that work in your practice as well?
Well, again, so it's different for everyone. Again, meeting people where they're at and financially where they're at. So I've got to ask about budget constraints. So I do love herbs. Yes, that's what made me smile. I do love my herbs, but not everybody loves to take them. So that's fine.
Some people aren't as masochistic as the rest of us.
No. And so it's about being quite creative in how to take them sometimes. But some people's vitality is that's so low that really probably herbs aren't going to do it. It's going to be too stimulating. And sometimes it's just about really gentle nutraceuticals. And as I say, I offer EFT, I offer Reiki. Sometimes it's just about holding space for someone. And they're not quite ready yet. Everybody comes at a different stage of growth or stage of repair. I've seen some people who they've done the herbals and we've gotten past the fibromyalgia and things like that. And then one woman said to me, I've just had this dream, and it was a reoccurring dream, and it was clearly something from her past that stuck with her, but it wasn't until her body was well enough for it to come back up. So it's probably not for me to decide when it's time. It's probably for the body to decide when it's time.
And I think that is such a gift that we can give them as natural therapists is, you know, you go to your GP and it's 15 minutes in and out, but we actually do have that ability to hold a little bit more space and to actually, you know, just, how are you doing? What's going on with you? And actually put that person back in the center of the medicine. Whereas, not a criticism, but sometimes I find that Western medicine, it's a bit more like, well, you're just numbers on a page. If the numbers on the page are good, you're out the door. And it's like, well, where is that humanity? That's what I sort of found.
Yes, and some of the prescriptions, they do the one thing, whereas I tend to say to people, and this sounds like a bit woo, but they go, what am I to expect from the herbs? And I'm like, well, the herbs know what they're doing for you anyway. So, you know, like, yes, there will be energy. How long it takes, I'm not sure. But they work with the body. They're not going to alter it. They're working with the body to just foster that wholeness and a return to health.
Definitely. Because I'm quite big in the nature connection space, and I'm, you know, quite animistic as my own personal philosophy. So I always see the herbs as this little spirit ally that when you take them, they're coming down there and they're helping you and they're guiding you and they're, you know, comforting you a little bit through your journey.
Absolutely. And I say to people, food was our first medicine, herbs were the second medicine if we needed them.
Yeah.
And they know what to do, providing we give them a good environment to work in. And that's what you're saying.
Definitely. And I always love the sort of a little bit more of the Native American concept sometimes, with Great Bear coming down and showing us herbal medicine and all that kind of thing. So like the natural world actually speaking to us and giving us these tools and these allies to achieve, you know, what our souls are put on the earth for.
We're very disconnected these days, and that disconnect could just be the trauma. It doesn't have to be. I say to my clients, you know, childhood trauma can be just as far as having a single parent family where it's not enough money, up to the worst possible scenario. And it's subjective, and it's not up to us to decide what's traumatic. It's up to the individual too.
Definitely. And I mean, that was a huge thing for me, was when I listened to Gabor Mate, and Gabor Mate was like, you can never compare traumas, right? Never compare traumas.
That's
trauma
right.
is trauma, and we'll deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, didn't he?
No,
or When the Body Says No.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Van der Kolk wrote When the Body Keeps the Score. And so they're both along the same line, that trauma manifests in a physical way.
For sure.
And that just resonates with me. I see it, and I was it, and I just suffice to hold space and allow someone to just open up is probably enough.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think when you start to break down the trauma, like, I mean, for myself personally, like, I've noticed that once a lot of my trauma was worked on, my weight changed. Like, I was struggling to lose a little bit of weight, and it wasn't until I actually started to break down through some of my traumas that my weight actually started to shed off. And that's been quite a little bit of an eye-opener for me too, because it really was that mind-body connection.
Well, the weight lifted, didn't it?
That's right, yeah.
You know, so, yeah, absolutely. And it's not until the body can release something that it can start to work as it's meant to.
Definitely, yeah. And so then with your graduate nutrition then, how do you approach the dietary thing with people? So you said that's not necessarily a first point of call, but when do you sort of bring it in? Just when they're ready, when they're looking at it? And how do you approach that for people? Because at the moment we seem to see diet as such an ideological sort of constraint for a lot of people. They seem to get on these dietary trains and don't want to change. How do you approach that for some people? Yeah.
That is the hardest thing, because it was a bit like when I was younger too, and I was seeking knowledge, and there's so much misinformation out there. And I'm just someone who might say, think of how ancestral man ate and try to emulate that. And people look at me with shock, because people are fat phobic and they're like taking in a lot of raw greens, and there's a lot of things going on. So I had one lady last week, and her liver enzymes were quite high. So it was something I broached immediately, was let's swap this for that. But the lady with the fibro I spoke of, she wasn't up to it. Yeah. And then at the end, where she's like, I've got no pain, I'm feeling great, I said, let's use food now as medicine. And I actually do metabolic balance, so I used it with her. But I don't use it with everyone. You know, it's not right for everyone.
So what is metabolic balance, for those of us who don't know?
So metabolic balance was developed in Europe by, he was a doctor, and his wife a nutritionist, and her sister a naturopath, the way I understand it. So it was the best of all three.
Yep.
And they developed this program that was, it's not a blood test diet, but there was 36 different blood tests done to see where your metabolism is at.
Yeah.
So looking, as you know, looking at the blood test, you could see how the liver's performing, how the thyroid's performing, the gastric intestinal system, whether it's absorbing iron, things like that. So over the course of many years, they developed an algorithm that they use. And to be honest, I've probably done 30 plans and none have been the same, even mother and daughter.
Yeah, wow.
So it is true, because I was skeptical, and it is true. None are the same. But if you stick to it, it's the food that works well for your particular body. And my partner lost 19 kilos. The lady I was just speaking about, she's lost 25 centimeters. So clearly, once, as you said, once the body is less burdened by that weight, it can get about the process of healing itself.
For sure. And it's something that I've found really interesting when actually diving into traditional cultures a little bit more, specifically the Asian culture. So I've got a lot of Asian friends, and what they do is, you know, like the main meal that's in the center will be bland, right? It'll be bland, it'll be kind of normal. But then when you put it in your own bowl, you can actually start to add different flavors or different herbs or different things that I guess resonates with you more on that day. So it's like a bland food that you can then personalize to yourself, your own genome. And I always thought that was quite a fascinating little concept personally.
Yeah, because then we're going to add herbs and spices, which are natural medicine anyway, as opposed to everybody's so busy these days. They're buying, as you know, processed foods, which are only out to make money.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not actually for your health. No.
And so then what other services do you offer? So we've talked Reiki, you offer the EFT tapping, the nutritional metabolic balancing. What other sort of services do you offer to people? Yeah, please go through them.
No, we've got lots, because we've got a little health hub at Oxenford, and we've just got a few more people who have joined us. So we have kinesiology. Oh,
wonderful.
And we have NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which we're combining with those metabolic balance as well.
Sweet.
Yeah, because a lot of people are addicted and emotionally attached to their food, and so that would work quite nicely. And then my partner, who is obviously older than me, he's just had a total career change, and he's done his remedial massage.
Sweet, yeah. Awesome.
And today he's off doing dry needling course. So we have the massage, all types, lymphatic, remedial, relaxation. We have dry needling, we have cupping. We have kinesiology, we have NLP, the Reiki, EFT, nutrition, naturopathy, and we're going to start workshops.
Far out. That sounds like an amazing array of therapies.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
We're just coming up on time. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can they find these? Where can they get into contact with you? Where's your clinic located? Do you do telehealth? How can they get in touch with you, Leone?
Yes, we do telehealth, and we do face-to-face consultations. We're in Oxenford. We're on Old Pacific Highway, directly opposite Bunnings. Everyone knows Bunnings. And right next to Ideal Lighting and Reese Plumbing. So it's just upstairs, directly opposite Bunnings there at Oxenford.
So where's Oxenford?
Oxenford's on the north end of the Gold Coast.
Cool.
So near Dreamworld.
Perfect.
Everyone knows Dreamworld. So we're at 149 Old Pacific Highway, Oxenford.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Leone. It's been absolutely wonderful to share some space with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great.
No worries. And for everybody else out there, links are always in the description below. And if you're near the Gold Coast or in Queensland, please drop in on Leone and see what she's got on offer, because I'm guaranteed that she can help you.
Okay, so I'll just give you the website.
Yeah, please go.
www.harvestinghealth.com.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay.
For everybody else out there, have a great afternoon, and we'll catch you all next time. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Therapist Spotlight. If you would like to know more about ANTA, visit us at www.anta.com.au.